Welcome to the EMT Blood Pressure Podcast. I'm Samuel Harrison, and today we're diving into a question that's got everyone buzzing. Can we ditch the blood pressure cuff and still get an accurate reading? To help unpack this, I've got a resident blood pressure guru with me.
Hey everyone, Olivia Harper here, ready to break down the latest in cuffless blood pressure technology.
Perfect. Because, let's be honest, those inflatable cuffs can be a bit of a pain, right?
Oh, absolutely. Not exactly the most comfortable experience, especially if you need frequent readings. But the real question is, can these newfangled cuffless gadgets really step up and replace the tried and true method?
Right. Because at the end of the day, accuracy is key.
Yeah.
Before we jump into the cuffless stuff, can you give us a quick refresh on how traditional blood pressure cuffs actually work?
Sure thing. It all comes down to squeezing. The cuff inflates, putting pressure on your arm, and temporarily stopping blood flow. As it slowly deflates, a healthcare professional listens for the sound of blood rushing back through your arteries using a stethoscope. Those sounds, called Korotkoff sounds, tell them your systolic and diastolic pressures.
Systolic being the top number when your heart pumps, and diastolic the bottom one, when your heart rests between beats.
Got it. So how do these cuffless devices even attempt to measure that without, well, the squeezing part?
That's where the science gets really cool. Most cuffless devices rely on either pulse transit time or arterial tonometry.
Pulse transit time sounds like something out of Star Trek.
A little bit, yeah. Picture this. Imagine timing how long it takes for a pulse wave to travel from your heart to, say, your fingertip. That's your pulse transit time, or PTT. The fascinating part, it's inversely related to your blood pressure. The faster the wave travels, the higher your blood pressure.
So these devices are basically measuring the speed of my blood, mind blown.
Exactly. Think of the Samsung My BP Lab app. It uses the phone's optical sensor to pick up the pulse wave in your fingertip and calculates the PTT from there. Pretty slick, right?
Slick, but is it reliable? Everyone's body is different. Wouldn't that affect things? You hit the nail on the head. Things like artery stiffness vary from person to person, and that can skew the PTT reading. That's why these devices usually need to be calibrated against a standard cuff-based monitor first, kind of like setting your watch to the official time.
Okay, makes sense. So PTT is one approach.
Yeah.
What about this arterial tonometry thing?
This one's a bit more direct. Imagine gently pressing on a water hose to feel the pressure changes inside. That's kind of what arterial tonometry does. It applies a light pressure to an artery, usually in your wrist, until it flattens slightly. This lets the device measure the subtle pressure changes in the artery and calculate your blood pressure.
So instead of squeezing your whole arm, it's targeting a specific artery. Pretty
Yeah.
clever.
Right. The B Pro smartwatch uses this method, and it's really cool because it can give you continuous 24-hour blood pressure monitoring, which is a huge step up from just occasional spot checks.
Wow, continuous monitoring. That would be game-changing for people who need to keep a really close eye on their blood pressure.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling there's got to be a catch, right?
There always is, unfortunately. Tonometry's Achilles heel is motion artifact. Basically, any movement can throw off the readings. So you might need to wear the device with adhesive tape to keep it super stable against your skin.
Ah, the joys of technology.
Oh.
Always a trade-off. So we've got apps, we've got smartwatches. Are there any other contenders in this cuffless blood pressure arena?
You bet. Remember those medical tricorders from Star Trek? We're not quite there yet, but some devices are getting pretty close.
Wait, you're telling me we're on the verge of self-diagnosing with a handheld device? Sign me up.
Hold your horses. It's not quite that simple yet. The technology is still developing. But there are some fascinating examples out there. The Bodymetrics Performance Monitor, for instance, also uses PTT technology but takes a measurement from your fingertip. And then there's the FreeScan Personal Cardiovascular Monitor, which uses a force sensor on your radial artery to pick up the pulse wave, also based on PTT.
Okay, so there's a lot of different tech out there trying to crack this cuffless code.
Yeah.
But the big question is, can we actually trust these readings? Are they accurate enough to ditch the cuff for good?
That's the million-dollar question. And unfortunately, there isn't a simple yes or no answer.
Uh-oh. Here comes the reality check.
Right. Here's the deal. A lot of these fancy apps and gadgets haven't undergone the super rigorous validation processes that traditional blood pressure cuffs have. So their accuracy compared to the gold standard is still a bit of a question mark.
Okay, so how big of a deal are we talking?
Well-
Could the readings be way off?
It's possible, and even what seems like a small error can have big implications when it comes to blood pressure.
Like how much of a difference? Give me an example.
Well, imagine this. An error of just 5 millimolars, which might sound tiny, could misclassify millions of people as either having hypertension or not. That's a massive deal because it affects how their condition is managed, whether they need medication, and so on.
Yikes. That's a sobering thought. So while these cuffless gadgets might be super convenient, they're not necessarily reliable enough for making serious medical decisions.
Hmm.
What else should we be wary of?
Well, as we mentioned, motion artifact is a big one. Both PTT and tonometry are very sensitive to movement, which can skew the results.
So no checking your blood pressure on a roller coaster, got it.
Exactly. Another challenge is data management and interpretation.
You mean all those readings these devices are constantly collecting?
Yep. To be truly useful for healthcare providers, there needs to be robust software that can reliably transfer and analyze all that data. Right now, that's a bit of a weak spot.
Okay, so we've got accuracy concerns, motion artifact data management. Anything else to add to the list?
One of the biggest limitations is the lack of clinical correlation. We simply don't have enough research yet to show how these cuffless readings actually relate to long-term health outcomes.
So even if a device spits out a number, we don't know for sure what that number means for your overall health.
Right. More clinical studies are needed to understand how cuffless readings compare to traditional methods and how they can inform treatment decisions.
So it sounds like this whole cuffless blood pressure thing is still a bit of a work in progress.
It is, but that doesn't mean it's not promising. There's a ton of potential here, and researchers are working hard to refine these technologies.
Well, then let's dive into that potential, shall we? What does the future hold for cuffless blood pressure measurement?
On the validation front, groups like the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, or IE for short, are developing specific protocols to test the accuracy of these devices in a much more rigorous way.
So setting a higher bar,
Uh,
which is good news for everyone. What about the technology itself? Any exciting advancements on the horizon?
Absolutely. Researchers are exploring multi-point PTT measurement, which could boost accuracy by taking readings from multiple spots on your body instead of just one.
So instead of just your fingertip, it might look at your wrist or earlobe too.
Exactly. And there are entirely new types of sensors emerging, like ballistocardiography sensors, which can actually detect those tiny vibrations your body makes when your heart beats.
Whoa, those sound like mini seismometers for your body.
Kind of. They have the potential to measure blood pressure in a whole new way. We're also seeing incredibly innovative devices, like smartphone cases that integrate both photoplethysmography and tonometry.
Wait, all that tech packed into a phone case? That's wild.
It really is. The bottom line is, the future of cuffless blood pressure monitoring is looking bright, but it's crucial to remember.
That we're not quite there yet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So while you might see a ton of these devices on the market, it's important to be cautious and informed.
Don't just assume the number on your watch or phone is the gospel truth.
Absolutely. Talk to your doctor about your individual needs and whether these devices are right for you.
Great advice. So we've talked a lot about the tech itself, but I'm curious about the human side of things. Who are these cuffless devices really aimed at? Who stands to benefit the most?
That's a great question. I think there are a few key groups who could really benefit if this technology continues to develop. First and foremost, people with hypertension who need to monitor their blood pressure frequently.
Makes sense. Having to check your blood pressure multiple times a day with a traditional cuff can be a real hassle.
Totally. Cuffless devices could make it so much easier and more convenient for these folks to keep track of their readings, especially for those who are already comfortable with smartwatches or health apps.
I can see that being a game changer for a lot of people. Who else might find these devices helpful?
Another group is athletes or fitness enthusiasts who want to keep tabs on their cardiovascular health during workouts.
So instead of just relying on heart rate, they could get a more complete picture of how their body is responding to exercise.
Exactly. And because many of these devices offer continuous monitoring, you could potentially see how your blood pressure changes throughout your workout, which could be really valuable information.
Interesting. Any other groups we should be thinking about?
There's a lot of buzz about the potential for cuffless technology in remote patient monitoring, especially for people in rural areas or those who have difficulty accessing healthcare.
So it could help bridge the gap in care for folks who can't easily see a doctor in person.
Precisely. Imagine a patient in a remote area using a cuffless device to send their blood pressure readings to their doctor in real time. That could be incredibly helpful for managing chronic conditions and even preventing emergencies.
That's a powerful use case. It feels like there's a lot of potential for cuffless tech to empower people to take control of their health. But let's be real for a second. We can't ignore those accuracy concerns we talked about earlier.
You're absolutely right. Accuracy is the crux of it all. Until we have more solid validation studies and clinical data to back up the claims of these devices, it's tough to fully endorse them as replacements for traditional blood pressure measurement.
So where does that leave us? Should people just avoid cuffless devices altogether for now?
Not necessarily. It's more about being informed and realistic about their limitations. If you're thinking about using a cuffless device, do your research. Look for devices that have undergone some level of validation, even if it's not the gold standard yet.
And don't rely solely on the readings from these devices to make any major health decisions.
Exactly. Talk to your doctor. They can help you interpret the data and figure out if a cuffless device is a good fit for your specific needs.
So while these devices might not be ready to completely replace the cuff, just yet it sounds like they could be a useful tool in the right context.
I agree. And it's a field that's rapidly evolving. As the technology improves and we get more research, I think we'll see cuffless blood pressure measurement become more and more integrated into healthcare.
It'll be fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
Yeah.
One thing I'm curious about is this. We've always focused on that single blood pressure reading you get at the doctor's office.
Huh.
But our blood pressure isn't static, right? It changes throughout the day.
Mm.
How does that factor into all of this?
You're totally right. Our blood pressure isn't just one number. It's constantly changing depending on what we're doing, what we're feeling, even what we're eating.
So it's not just about having a normal reading at the doctor's office. It's about the bigger picture, how our blood pressure behaves throughout the day.
Precisely. And that's where cuffless technology could really shine, because these devices offer continuous monitoring. They can give us a much more detailed view of blood pressure variability than we've ever had before.
So instead of just a snapshot, we get a full-length movie of how our blood pressure is doing. That's amazing.
Right. And this kind of data could be revolutionary for diagnosing and managing cardiovascular disease. Imagine being able to spot subtle changes in blood pressure variability that might hint at a problem before any symptoms even show up.
It's like having an early warning system for our hearts.
Exactly. But of course, we still need more research to validate these devices and figure out what these blood pressure variations really mean for our long-term health.
Okay, so it's exciting, but we need to be cautious.
Yeah.
It feels like we're on the verge of a whole new era of personalized medicine.
I think we are. Cuffless technology could unlock incredible insights into our cardiovascular health. But just like with any new technology, we need to be mindful of its limitations and use it responsibly.
Solid advice as always.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up this deep dive into the world of cuffless blood pressure monitoring?
If you're intrigued by this technology, stay curious. Keep learning about the latest advancements, but always approach new tech with a healthy dose of skepticism. And most importantly, talk to your doctor. They can help you figure out if a cuffless device is right for you and help you make sense of the information it provides.
Couldn't have said it better myself. A huge thank you to Olivia Harper for joining me today and sharing her expertise.
My pleasure. It's always a great conversation.
And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in to the EMT Spot's Blood Pressure Podcast. I'm Samuel Harrison.
And I'm Olivia Harper.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share this episode with anyone who might be interested in the future of blood pressure monitoring. Until next time, stay informed about your health.